Welcome to another episode of the Jobology podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, and before we get to my guest today, I want to remind you guys to subscribe on YouTube and follow us at Jobology Podcast on all major social media. My guest today is a flight attendant. Her name is Lindsay, and she's going to talk to us all about jet lag cures, unruly passengers, and the many other things that go into being a flight attendant. So without further ado, Lindsay. Thank you for being with me today, Lindsay.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How's your day?
Good. I'm home, so that's
Nice.
exciting. Home for a couple of days.
Yep. I actually have some questions about trips and how that all works, so we'll get to that down the line. But the way I always like to start out on the podcast is I like to try and create a baseline so that everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. So if we were to catch up and I saw you out and I was like, hey, what are you doing nowadays? What would you say to that versus like what's your official job title?
Yeah, so official job title is flight attendant,
Okay.
and I know a lot of people still kind of like to use the old term stewardess, but we try to
Hmm.
keep that away now, gender roles
Right.
and all that.
Sure.
But yeah, I would say like if we were out, I mean everyone pretty much knows what a flight attendant is, but I
Mhm.
maybe joke around and say like a glorified sky waitress.
Nice.
That's a fun
Okay.
one. Or I get paid to travel the world.
That's
That's another
that's
one.
pretty awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and then how do you and why? Like, I guess we'll start with the why. I feel like that's kind of important as well. So, like, why get into being a flight attendant in the first place?
Yeah, actually, so for me personally, I graduated college and I was, 24, and I was like,
Mm,
oh, I'm so young. I don't want to hop into this like career yet, where I'm stuck
right.
kind of doing the same thing every day. So a friend of mine, she actually applied to be a flight attendant, and she's like, oh, you should totally do it, and we can travel around together. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm young, and why not do that? So yeah, I plan to do it for like a year, maybe 2 years, and it's been 8 years.
Wow.
So I
Jeez. Okay.
clearly fell in love with it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean that seems like there'd be a lot of perks to that job that, maybe the typical job doesn't have. But yeah, I think that's definitely a lot of people that I talk to that could be their why, is just, hey, I needed a job, I was looking for something. Somebody said, I think you'd be great at this, and here we are, 10 years, 8 years down the line, whatever it might be. Uh how, like the actual how do you get the job? So is it something that you just apply for online? Is it something that you like send a resume to somebody and you're like, hey, put my resume to the top of the stack? Like, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because it's a lot more challenging of a process than I think most people would assume.
Yeah.
Um, so there's two different types, right? There's like a commercial airline flight attendant and there's a corporate airline flight attendant.
Okay.
I work for a commercial airline, so I applied online, and
Hmm.
then they have you like, it seriously was probably like a 30-page process of
Oh
answering a
wow.
bunch of questions, your resume, like history past 10 years. Like it was way more detailed than I kind of thought. And then from there, I had three different interviews.
Hmm.
So I did a video interview, a phone call interview, and then they flew me out to Atlanta for an actual in-person interview.
Oh wow.
So from there, if
Jeez.
you go through all that, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty, it's way more like, I was like, wow, I just thought like, I'd be like, hey, like I'm a fun server, I know what I'm doing, and you can
Uh-huh.
give me a job. But after that, you get a conditional job offer,
Okay.
and you go through training. My training was 2 months, and they put me up in a hotel in Atlanta for 2 months, and I have to pass all the training. And so you have to go through different emergency procedures. You learn about all the aircraft. There's really only like one day of customer service, which is so funny because that's the day to day that we
Yeah.
do, but we don't
Yeah.
focus on it like at all.
Hmm.
And so after 2 months, if you pass and you are successful with everything, then you actually get the job as a flight attendant.
Nice. And then from there, is it like you have like a, so my uncle's a pilot, like a little backstory. My uncle's a pilot, so I know like a little bit about the airline industry. Do you have like a hub city that you work out of or something like that? I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So my airline has a bunch of different ones.
Hmm.
And you don't get to choose where they send you.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
So when I was in training, right after they actually sent me to Minneapolis. And so I had 3 days to move to Minneapolis.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so that was I'm a San Diego girl, grew up, here in San Diego, so that was a big culture shock.
Yeah, a little change, you know.
Yeah, yeah, especially winter. Yeah,
Um,
didn't know winter lasted so long.
yeah, like forever. I feel like it's
Yeah,
year round in Minneapolis sometimes.
yeah, yeah. So I was there for 3 months, and then I transferred to New York City.
Oh wow.
So that was a lot of fun. I really loved it. I lived in New York for 2 years, and then I was able to transfer to Salt Lake City. Did that for another couple of years, and then I transferred to Los Angeles, and now I'm actually back in Salt Lake.
Okay.
So it's when you first get out of training, they kind of send you where they need you. And then
Hmm.
over time, you can kind of put your preferences in and change it up a bit.
Like the longer you've been with the company, the better chance you have of getting what you're asking for, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay.
definitely, this job is all seniority based. So it's like the
Hmm.
more time, just the better overall it gets.
Okay. And then you just mentioned you're in San Diego, so you don't have to live necessarily in the city that you're based out of.
Right. So
Okay.
I fly to Salt Lake City. So people that always throws them for a loop. I'm
Hmm.
like, you drive to work, I fly to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I
you
guess,
know,
yeah.
it's different, absolutely. It comes with its own challenges because like just the other day, the flight that I was supposed to take to work canceled. And so
Oh,
I was like,
geez.
oh my gosh, I'm like, how am I gonna get to work today?
Right.
So thankfully, I was able to hop on a different airline, which is we can get into that. But yeah, so I have to make sure I'm there for my sign-in time and make sure I show up on my own, however I can get there.
Gotcha. Okay, so they're not like, oh, it's okay, totally fine. The flight. They're still like, nope, you got to get here. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's my choice to live outside of my base.
Mm,
So it is my responsibility to make sure I'm there for work.
to be where you got to be. Okay.
Yes.
That's yeah, that kind of makes sense, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what did you? So do you have to go to like school? Yeah, we didn't mention school, but like, is there
Yeah.
like a school for it, or is it just something that's like, no, you don't have to have like a degree in, I don't know, airline-ness. I don't know what the
Mm-hmm.
word
Yeah.
is.
So you don't need any degree. A degree is preferred. That's
Sure.
kind of I think what everyone's kind of shifting to. But you don't need a degree. What they love is customer service experience.
Okay.
They love anything within that service industry. We have a lot of people that used to work for like Disneyland and Disney World. So
Yeah,
kind of funny. They really enjoy that. And then like I said, you go to the training. And so every company has a kind of a different training process.
sure.
Um, my airline, I was super lucky where they actually like paid me a minimum wage during my training.
Oh, cool.
Um, some airlines it's unpaid, so that's something to
Yikes.
definitely consider, especially because it's like a
Yeah,
2 months long.
right.
Um,
And you can't really have a secondary job while you're doing that, I'm sure. It's not.
No, no, because for
Okay.
me, it was 6 days a week of training, and it's 8 to 10 hours a day, and then and you obviously have to go everywhere their training facility is. So I was in Atlanta, and so that's like you can't really probably find a job that quickly for that minimum
Yeah,
amount of
for like a
time.
temp. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But for corporate flight attendants, there is like a like a school that you go to. I don't know the details of that, but it is a little bit different on the corporate side than the commercial side.
Gotcha. I something I find fascinating about jobs and like that I think people don't know a lot is what does your average day look like? So for you, I don't know, maybe it might be a little difficult to answer because I'm sure like, it's kind of depends where I'm going, what the situation is, but like what is a typical like I don't know, flight schedule or, your schedule look like? How many days are you on? How many days are you off? What's that kind of look like? And then when you're actually on a trip, like what does your day to day look like?
Yeah, yeah. So I would never say that we have an average day, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I could see
But
that.
So like in general, I have to show up to the airport an hour before departure.
Okay.
And so that can be if the departure is at 6 a.m., I'm there at 5 a.m. If the departure is, at 2:30 in the afternoon, I have to be there at 1:30 kind of thing.
Sure.
And I report and we will start boarding the plane. This, I think, is the most fascinating thing that people don't know is flight attendants do not get paid for boarding. We are
Wait.
not paid.
Wait. What? For that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So while all of us are, trying to find our seats, put our bags in the overhead, you guys are just like, come on, let's go. Chop chop. I'm trying to get this. Okay. Got it. So,
Yeah.
all right.
So we get our actual hourly rate is for when
Mm-hmm.
that door closes to door opening.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. So
Ugh.
it's kind of interesting because obviously, like I'm sure most people wouldn't clock in for their job for a whole hour and not get paid.
No.
So yeah, we actually like we have to be there and we're not getting paid for that
Ugh.
hour. And so when that's actually one of the most challenging parts is getting people
Mm-hmm.
to sit down, put their stuff away, and like close the door, and,
Let me
and it
close
takes a
this
long
dang door.
time.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Now,
Mhm.
kind of on that before we skip past
Yeah.
this, I thought of something is like, let's say, you close the doors or whatever, you start to taxi a little bit, and then there's like a delay for whatever reason. Sometimes you gotta, there's other planes in the way, there's whatever, you know. Are you getting paid then?
Yeah. So if we close the door and then we either, even if we're just on the taxi, we're sitting on the
Hmm.
taxiway, we're going to get paid. Even if we
Okay,
probably go back and open the door again, there's going to be still like a paying, like the process is like
gotcha.
different amounts of pay. But yeah, so that at least I just want to like
Okay.
close that door.
I was like, man, dude, that stinks if you're like, well, not until we're like up in the air. I'm like, oh, yikes,
Yeah,
that could be a
yeah. I mean,
while.
sometimes like we go back and we end up like deplaning, but we
Hmm.
have to sit at the airport. We're not getting paid
Oh,
for that.
brother.
So it definitely has like it's the negative part of the job, I would
Sure.
say. Literally just the other day, I sat at the airport unpaid for 4 hours. I couldn't go
Oh,
anywhere, but we had a mechanical situation.
oh gosh.
Yeah, that's
That's terrible.
definitely unfortunate.
Yeah, that seems pretty
But don't
awful.
deter that, we still have a
Sure.
lot of great perks.
Oh yeah, I would. Yeah, I think that they might. About those don't seem like they would be happening like every day. So you get those one offs, but then you get trips and all that. You get to see the world. So it seems like it might be a
Yeah.
fairish trade off.
Right. Most of the time it's a smooth operation, I would say. But you have those rare occasions where it's not and it can be frustrating, but and make for a very, very long day.
Yeah. Oh, I could totally see that. Yeah. So is there a certain amount of time that, you said you waited for 4 hours? Is there like a limit where they go, okay, you're not respond like you can go now. Like this
Yeah.
clearly we're not taking off or the flight's canceled or something like that.
Hmm. So for it really just it's kind of dependent as far as flight attendants, our official duty day, so like sign in to release time can be up to 15 hours.
Oh,
So that's a
yikes.
really long day. So when you
Yeah.
hear a 4 hour delay, you're like, oh, these flight attendants are going to go home. Nope, we still have plenty of time
Mm-mm.
to be there.
Yeah. Jeez.
So yeah, that makes and it's just it's tiring.
Oh, yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, so 15-hour duty day is our
Ugh.
maximum.
Okay.
Pilots have a stricter policy.
Mm-hmm.
So which I totally understand they're doing a little bit harder of a job than us.
I
Um,
feel like the plane flies itself.
at this point, right? But yeah, so like I said, it's a rare occasion where we have to kind of have those really long days. But yeah, up to 15 hours. And if we get back into the typical day,
Yeah.
I can fly anywhere from 1 to 4 flights within a day.
Oh wow. Okay. That was not
Hmm.
what I was expecting. I was thinking one,
Yeah.
and then you're done.
No, so it depends. Like obviously, if it's I'm going like from Salt Lake City all the way over to Europe, that's going to be the one flight.
Okay.
But if I'm going back and forth from California, I can do up to like 4,
Oh wow.
as long as
Okay.
it fits into that 15-hour duty period.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hmm.
That actually answers one of the questions I had later of like what's the
Oh,
longest
okay.
continuous shift you could work? So
Hmm.
15 hours would be like the where you would cap out at.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Um, once you're like, okay, plane's boarded, got the door closed, I from flying and maybe, if the viewers flown too, they might have an idea of like what you guys are doing, doing the like safety check, doing the whatever. But is there like a like sheet checklist that you have to go through? Is there just a mental checklist that you go like what is kind of your duties once the plane is like off and going?
Yeah, so we definitely we have like a mental checklist that we go through. So just from the beginning, actually, you get on the plane before passengers come on. We have to check all the emergency equipment to make sure everything's operational in case anything goes wrong. So that's great.
Sure. Yeah,
Um,
hey, that gives me some peace of mind. At
exactly.
least
So
somebody's checked this thing today. So okay.
yes, yeah, yeah. We check it every single time we come on before flight. And then, once everyone comes on board, we still have a couple of duties to make sure it's completed. So before we can close the door, we have to make sure that all of the carry-on items are stowed and put away and that the overhead bins are closed. We make sure that the passengers in the exit row, they're briefed. And I know a lot of people think that this is so funny, but we genuinely need to hear that you, yes, are aware you're in an exit
Yep.
row, and yes, you're willing and able to assist us.
Yeah. We
And
just sat in an exit row on the way back from Arizona. We just came back recently from
oh yeah.
Arizona and they were like, okay, we need a verbal yes. And like
Mm-hmm.
you, like,
Yep.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
Per FAA, it's you
Wow.
have to hear it. So when we're looking at you and we're asking you these questions, a nod or it doesn't work, and you
Right.
please remove your headphones because it's
Yeah.
it's actually per FAA and it's
Yeah.
respectful.
Yeah. That's the other. Yeah. Like I'm trying to speak to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we have to yeah make sure those overhead bins are closed and carry items are stowed, and then those exit rows are we call them visually and verbally assessed.
Okay. Nice.
Then we can close our door, and we make sure that everyone has their seatbelts on, make sure those tray tables are up, the seat reclining, that's the big one, right? So people are like, what's the big deal with that, right?
I have a guess. Let me. I want to see if I'm right, but
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
no
guess.
idea. My guess is that if there's something that goes wrong and the seat's back, it's going to take the row behind you more time to get out.
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
100% it.
All
You
right.
nailed it.
All
Yeah.
right.
And it's funny because people are like, they'll say that. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm fine. And then I'll look at the person. I'm like, do you care about that person behind you getting out in an emergency? And they're like, oh.
Or what if you let the person in front of you lay their seat back? Well, then you're going to
Hmm.
have trouble getting out. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what it is. It kind of could block their exit if they can leave. And that's the same thing with having those bags underneath. It could trip you up, if there's an emergency, it's the person next
Yeah.
to you, stuff like that. So it's things that, of course, like flying an airplane is actually one of the safest forms of transportation. But if something goes wrong, it's probably major.
Yeah. It's probably not not a, flat tire.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you can get out as quickly as possible. And this is kind
Yeah.
of a fun fact. During our training, we are trained as flight attendants to, in an emergency, get every passenger off that plane
Mhm.
safely in under 90 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's like,
So
okay.
that is our
Jeez.
training process. And that goes hand in hand with making sure that passengers are not grabbing luggage because
Uh,
that's what
because
we
that's not
say,
important.
yes,
Yeah. Like,
your life and everyone
yeah.
else, their safety is more important. Your
Right.
luggage will come second. And like, but that's what they've I don't know, you can watch tons of videos, and that's where unfortunately a lot of passengers or flight attendants and pilots, they get harmed or even die because passengers are so focused on grabbing their luggage out of the overhead bins. And that is not a priority. So like that's something I want to reiterate as much as I can. It's like, just get
No,
off the
yeah.
plane. Get off the plane.
Yeah. You can replace pretty much, I mean, maybe there's something there, but you can replace it. You can't replace yourself. Yeah.
Yes,
All right. Fair
exactly.
enough. I like that. So, we're taking off, we're in the air,
Hmm.
things are going. Does turbulence scare you?
No, never.
Okay. I didn't think so.
I have moments where I'm like, "Ooh, that was a good one." I'm like, "I'm gonna take
Okay.
my seat."
Yeah. All right.
um, and I have been hurt in turbulence. So turbulence is air pockets, right? We are traveling most of the time. We kind of know when it's coming, um, and it's all based on weather radar, right? So sometimes like the pilots will call us back and they're like, "Hey, we want you to take your seat." And it's funny because sometimes we'll take our seats and we're like telling passengers, hey, take your seat, and then nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Yeah.
Again, it's a weather phenomenon, and it's like maybe the wind shifted by the time we got to that point, but it's all a safety and precaution. And then sometimes, we're all standing up and you have no idea you've hit this pocket. And I have had it happen where unfortunately I got thrown
Oh,
into a
jeez.
door
Oh,
and
jeez.
I injured my back.
I
So that was not fun.
Yikes.
But I still wouldn't say I'm like scared because I trust overall that it's going to be okay and manageable. But there are moments where I would say I'm like, oh, okay, that was like a really good turbulence amount, and I'm glad that we were sitting, or I'm glad everyone's okay.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, I mean, I know from me personally flying, but like, do you eventually, it's like time for refreshments or whatever, drinks, all that jazz. Is there like, can passengers get too drunk? I'm assuming.
Oh my gosh, yes, yes, all the time. So like at altitude, you're like, people
Oh,
don't
yeah.
understand, like you get up at altitude and that alcohol is going to affect you so differently. Like on
Right.
the ground, you can have, probably like 3, 4 drinks and you're totally fine. You have that in flight and it's like, it will hit you all at once differently. Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could speak from personal experience on that one too.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Like, I mean, I'm
Uh-huh.
guilty of it too. So I get
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
like, and it's funny because, maybe you got to the airport, you had a drink or two before your flight, and then you have 2 drinks on the plane, and all of a sudden you're like really drunk, and a flight attendant has to cut you off. And I've done that. Like, we actually have to do that sometimes. We are told to try to do like a 1 drink per hour situation,
Yeah.
just to manage things. Like, it's not necessarily like a strict policy, but we do try to keep an eye on it. And it's sometimes like it works out where, like, if you're on a longer flight, to Europe, I'm just like, hey, like, have a couple of waters and eat some food, because people don't do that
Mix it in.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then they're fine. But I've had people get sick. I've had people get a little bit aggressive or upset when you cut them off, and it's hard because it's like there's nowhere to go, right? So you get kicked out of a bar, we can just throw you out on the streets. Well, we can't really throw you out of the
Dang.
airplane.
You should be able to do that to some people.
I would love to
Just
have
kidding.
some parachutes and
Right.
just send you on
You're
their
like,
way.
we'll drop you off at the next airport, but we're gonna keep
Exactly.
going. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
but that's not how it works. So yeah, we're doing our best to kind of manage the situation and be as courteous as we can, and if we're like being like, hey, here's some water, that's probably just like our nice way of being like,
It's
you're
a good
getting
little sign.
a little too drunk
Hmm.
here, let's calm you down. And it doesn't happen often. I would say there are kind of more specific routes. I'm sure you could guess. Vegas is one.
Yeah, that's probably what. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, it happens.
Hmm.
And it's like, we try to, like I said, it's great because I know sometimes I'm like, oh, I only have an hour left. I'm like, I can maybe manage him for the next hour, or manage it for a little bit. But if I have like 6 more hours to go, I got to figure it out.
Yeah. This is where you start. Yeah. The problems could arise. Fair enough.
Yes,
Um.
absolutely.
Okay. Let's say we've landed now. Flight went fine. Land. Is there like a checkout procedure? I'm assuming.
So yeah, it's kind of funny. We just kind of like, everyone deplanes and leaves.
Hmm.
We have to make sure everyone's off the airplane. And then we kind of just go to our hotel or go to our layover and leave. Like, I don't really have to clock out.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is just making sure everybody's off the airplane and there's nothing left behind. We do our best to kind of look in overhead bins and underneath seats. Um, and yeah, that's kind of a very short version of my day.
Yeah. Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's funny because I have to sign in, but I don't have to sign out for my trip.
Interesting.
They just kind of
Interesting.
assume that I made it to my place, I guess.
Yeah. So you're like, well, if you don't show up the next time, maybe something happened. We got to figure that
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then how long is like a typical trip? Like, is it multiple days or is it just a day that you're traveling? Or like, I mean, you said, if you're going to Europe, I'm assuming, there's got to be some kind of like, week long schedule or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, so domestic wise, trips on average, I would say are about 3 days long.
Okay.
So you can find trips that are anywhere between like 1 to 3 days. I personally, because I do commute to Salt Lake for work,
Hmm.
I'm gonna try those longer trips, right?
Right. You're like, I'm already here.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it
Yeah.
worth my while. Um,
Gotcha.
my layover can be anywhere as short as 10 hours, all the way up to we have like some 32-hour layovers.
Wow.
International is a little bit different.
Hmm.
And you're going to get a minimum of 24 hours up to like 48, even 72 hours, which is like a
Oh,
paid
wow.
vacation at that
Yeah,
point.
that's pretty cool. I was like thinking,
Yeah.
like, oh, that kind of that's that you can't just like. But then it's like, well, no, I mean, if I'm in a new country, like, I got a few days, I'll go check out something. Okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. So just the other day, I was in London for
That's so
48
wild.
hours.
That's so
Yeah.
wild.
It's,
Yeah,
it's awesome. I mean, they put you
yeah.
up in a hotel. Um,
Okay, so that doesn't come out of your pocket. Like that's part of.
no,
Okay, nice.
So the hotel, they will they're like our contracted at different hotels at our layovers, and we have our own transportation set up. And so it's kind of funny because sometimes like passengers will try to hop on. They're like, "Oh, you're going to the hotel," and we're like, "Sorry, this is a contracted bus
Right.
for flight attendants. Like
Yeah.
can't take you also."
Not you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I clocked out at that point, right? I don't want to deal with
I don't got to
passengers
be. Yeah.
anymore.
Customer service is out the window now. Get out
Yeah,
of my
yeah.
way. Fair enough.
Right. So yeah, so we get to go to like transportation to and from the hotel and airport. And then it's up to us to what we do on the layover, and we can have a great time and explore. Do a lot of shopping. That's what I like to do,
Nice.
especially in a
Why
new
not?
city. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of
Why not?
shopping, lots of eating. There, I
I was gonna
love
say
eating new
trying
food.
new
Yeah,
foods. Yeah, yeah. Okay,
that's like
that's
my
pretty cool.
favorite thing. I like
That's
to
pretty
do
cool.
something very authentic to the city,
Hmm.
something that's fun that maybe passengers can, with like they can ask their flight attendants, "Hey, are you laying over in a new city tonight?" And if it's their city, give the flight attendants a list of restaurants that you like to go to, or
Okay.
like different areas to check out. I love asking like the locals. I'm like, "Hey, where should I go?" Because I have X amount of hours and I want to try to do some local things. So.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean, you can
Mm-hmm.
always do the touristy stuff, at other points. But yeah, if you only
Yeah.
have like a day or two, it's like, oh, let me try to do some of the more, authentic things.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Especially the
cool.
food wise, because it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, like your favorite restaurants in your city, and so
Right.
it's like, hey, like share that.
Exactly. Exactly. Is there like a job hierarchy? So like is there like a senior flight attendant and then like other flight attendant, or is it like, I mean, this might seem very, not, I was gonna say ignorant, but not correct in the sense of like, is the pilot your boss? Like, is that something?
So
I don't know.
it's kind of funny because like I don't really, I mean, I have a manager, but I don't report to a manager, right? Like
Okay.
it's a very self-sufficient job. Um, like my manager doesn't check if I'm showing up on time or not. Like that's my responsibility. And then within the plane, so it's not based off of seniority on that point. It's like
Okay.
based off positions that you bid for.
Okay.
Um, so we do have like what's called basically the flight leader. And I actually, that's kind of, I like to fly that position. You work in the first class cabin, and you are kind of responsible a little bit more at the end of the day, I would say, really for paperwork, right?
Okay.
If something happens, like you're the one that's going to go and you're going to have to fill out the paperwork and like kind of
Gotcha.
explain the
Like an
scenario.
incident report or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't really say that like I'm in charge of any of the flight attendants. Like it's very self-sufficient. So I trust that they're gonna do their job. I trust that if they need any help, we like help each other out.
Sure.
If there's a passenger, if there's a medical situation, or there is a
Hmm.
passenger who maybe is being a little bit drunk or out of
Unruly.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, unruly.
That's one of the questions I have later too.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're hitting
I feel.
everything. I love
Oh,
it.
I could. I mean, I feel like being a flight attendant is one of those things everyone knows what it is, but like there's so many details that you don't know about. So I love talking about it. But technically, I guess the pilot has the final say
Okay.
of what goes on. But I'm telling you, like 99% of the time, I will brief with the pilot, and he's like, "You're in charge. Just tell me what you need." He's like, "And I have your back,"
That's
because
cool.
they're not experiencing what we're experiencing. They're up in the
Right.
cockpit, doors closed. They don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
So they just need to know what I need, basically. So, like, if I call them and I say, "Hey, we need to land. We have a passenger who's being unruly and upset," and they're gonna be like, "Okay, no problem." Like most of the time, they're gonna be like, "All right, we're gonna lock down the door." So that's another thing. If there's an unruly passenger, if there is even a medical situation, the flight deck will go into lockdown mode. So this is all post 9/11 procedures.
Hmm.
Safety precautions and stuff. If
Sure.
there's like an emergency, anything going on in the back that they're not sure if it's going to be a distraction or if it's like actually a legit scenario, they
Yeah.
go down in lockdown mode. So they're not going to come out. So since we're the ones in the back in charge, that's kind of where the pilots are like, you make all the calls and you just tell me what you need.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
they know like you're the point person basically. Like you're seeing
Yeah.
everything, we'll just do what you need us to do. That's great.
Yep.
Like
Exactly.
that seems like that would be the way it should go, as opposed to them being like, no, I think we're gonna keep pushing through. Like you don't know what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll trade you positions at this point.
Yeah,
This
you
guy's
come out and deal with
crazy.
this person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. And then is there like a pay? So you mentioned that it's hourly
Yes.
because I would have assumed salary. Like that blows my mind still that you're like, well, yeah, no, we don't necessarily get paid the whole time. Like that's
Yeah.
insane. But
Yeah.
whatever, hey, I don't know what I can do to help you there.
hmm
But is there like a pay range for flight attendants that you could
hmm
let us know like what you could make, I guess?
Yeah. So every airline's a little bit different. But at my airline, so there's like your first year pay is your base
Okay.
pay. And then you get a yearly raise all the way up to 12 years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really, and there's pretty significant jumps. Like
Nice.
from my 4 to 5 year pay, I got like a
Mm,
$5 pay raise, which was
wow.
awesome,
Yeah,
a
that's pretty
huge pay
nice.
raise. So, and I mean, I can actually like it's public knowledge. You can look.
Hmm.
Your base pay it starts at about $32 an hour,
Okay.
and then all the way up to that 12 year pay is $70 per hour.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a
Nice.
good significant amount of, raises throughout the years. And then you get paid a little bit more for international flying.
Okay.
Like it raises a couple dollars more. That flight leader that I said, like, it's kind of the one in charge of paperwork, basically.
Sure.
I get paid an extra couple dollars an hour for that. And then
Do you
there's
get overtime?
so there's not really a thing like overtime, right? So um, I can work as little as I want each month, up to like basically as much as I kind of deem sane.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, you don't want
so
to run yourself into the ground.
yeah, like this
Okay.
job is it's physically exhausting. You're in different time
Yeah.
zones every day. You're on your feet all day. So basically, they give me a monthly schedule, and so I got assigned next month of January. I got assigned 85 hours to
For the
work for the
month.
month, hmm and I can pick trips up if I want to work more. I can try to get other people to take my trips to work less.
Can you like trade with people? Like if you're like, oh hey, I need this week off, and they're like, oh, I need this week off, and you're like, let's switch.
It's
Okay.
super flexible, which is
Nice.
great. So like it can be a thing where yeah, you're like, oh, I have this trip on Monday, Tuesday, but I would
Yeah.
rather work Friday, Saturday, and you just kind of exchange trips with people. And then people can just straight take my trip, and then I just have the days off. So that's helpful too. Or vice versa. I can, if I want to work more, I pick
Pick
that
up
up
something.
too.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So not necessarily overtime, but more job flexibility, work schedule wise. That's like
Yeah,
kind of the trade off.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's not really an overtime option. There's just like I can work more, and then
Hmm.
if we do extend, let's say we have that 15-hour duty day,
Yeah.
right? I have the option to then I guess get paid more, like if you want to consider it overtime,
Sure.
where I get paid an additional 4 hours on top of what we work. Or, which most of the time I do this, I'm like, I'm exhausted. It's been 15 hours.
Yeah.
I'm
No
done.
thanks. Yeah.
So that's, that's kind of where it comes into play. If people are like, oh, the flight attendants just left, please know that we've been there for probably 15 hours.
Yeah. I never understand like that. I don't know. I guess passenger, maybe from like the passenger perspective, it's like I've been traveling too, but it's like, yeah, you've been traveling this much. They've been traveling this much. Like it's a very
Mm-hmm.
different, like, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. One of my favorite comments, they like, oh, I'm tired. I've been traveling all day. I'm like, oh, that's cute. You've been sitting in your seat watching movies and
Yeah.
sleeping.
Yeah.
Like
Traveling.
you're,
Right.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, you're not going to get any pity from me about you traveling all day. Like I have been awake since 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, which means it's even earlier on my West Coast. I mean,
Uh,
it's a long day.
yeah. I have a couple job related questions here as we
Mm-hmm.
kind of get towards the end of the podcast, but something that we've already talked about and discussed is longest continuous shift. So I know that that's about 15 hours, the max you can go. Um, do you have a like unruly passenger story, like one that just kind of sticks with you, or when somebody like, do you have a story that you could share?
Yeah. I mean, I have unfortunately a few stories that I've dealt with. I mean, 8 years, I guess you come up with like some stories. I have stories about being recorded. I have stories about having to arrest passengers,
Oh wow.
unfortunately. That one's probably
What can lead to
the,
that? Like, what leads to someone
yeah,
getting arrested? You know what I mean? Like, are they just like not listening? Is that like the
yeah.
okay?
It's like if you won't listen, you won't calm down, and it's essentially creating a threat at this point.
Gotcha.
Whether it's just other passengers are getting scared, you're verbally threatening us, you're banging on the cockpit door, all the way up to being
What's wrong with people?
assaulted, which I have
Jeez.
unfortunately gotten punched in the shoulder before.
Oh, jeez.
So yeah, so
I
that's kind
wouldn't.
of where it leads to arrest, right? So the
Golly.
passenger, yeah, he would not calm down. He got really upset because I wouldn't serve him alcohol on the ground, which
Yeah.
we don't do a service on the ground most of the time.
Sure.
And then he also during our when we have the passenger or sorry the pilots come out to use the restroom, we
hmm
have a procedure where we can't have any passengers up in the aisle,
Right.
obviously, because
Yeah.
the cockpit door is
Safety.
open. Again,
Yeah.
9/11, we have all these procedures. And he kind of charged the cockpit door because he wanted to talk
Bad idea.
to the pilots about me not serving him a drink. And you can't do that.
You're barking up the wrong tree. Also, they're not on your
Yeah,
team. Like,
right,
they're not gonna.
right.
Yeah, they're not gonna side with
Um,
you and be like, yeah, you know what, you're right. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
oh yeah, yeah.
from there, unfortunately, he put his hands on me. He ended up swinging, hit me, and thankfully, passengers got involved and ended up
Yeah.
holding him down.
Oh,
And
that would have
yeah,
been me. Like,
yeah,
what are
and
you doing?
protecting me, like where I wasn't super injured, but I was obviously really upset. And yeah, at that
Sure.
point, we had to divert and land in a different city than we were supposed to. And police officers had to come and escort him off and all that. So
Gotcha.
it's,
Is that so? This might be maybe not a question you would know, but it might maybe you do. Is that who? So, I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this. I guess like when they land, does that city now have jurisdiction, or is it the city that they like left from that they would? You know what I mean? Like, where's the who
it's
puts them in
because
jail?
it's airspace, it's
Yeah.
actually federal.
Oh,
So yeah,
don't
it's
screw up
not
in
going
the
to be,
air.
yeah, it's not going to be a state
Dang.
crime. It's going to be a federal crime.
Okay.
And
Yikes.
so it's pretty major.
Mm-hmm.
As,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
All right. Yeah.
that's a
Don't
big
screw up in the
deal.
air. All right.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah, we're asking you just to really, really be kind to the flight attendants. And it's pretty basic stuff, right?
Seems like it. Like, just sit down, relax. We'll get you to your destination, and then you can go do whatever you want. Okay.
Yeah.
Um. Something I've also wanted to know, and maybe this is like an urban legend, but I thought I heard this at one point. Is there a height requirement and like can you be too tall to be a flight attendant?
You cannot be too tall, but you can be too
Okay.
short.
Ah, okay. I always thought there was like a height max too. Like, they're like,
um,
You can't even, you're walking down the aisle
I
like
know
this."
you're walking
Like,
down the aisle like
yeah.
that. I'm sure it's probably more of a comfort thing.
Uh-huh.
But
Okay.
so I guess like legally they can't like write down and say like, oh, it has to be like minimum height requirements. What they do as you go to your in-person interview, they see if you can close the overhead bin.
Gotcha.
And so that's kind of like while your feet are flat on the floor, they see if you can reach up and close the overhead bin. So that's kind of, where the
The
whole too
test.
short thing comes in. That's like the test of it, because that's part of our job description
Yeah,
to
exactly.
close overhead bins. Actually, on the topic of job description, I find it fascinating that people think our description is to take care of passengers as far as serving a beverage and snacks. Our job description is actually for the safety of the aircraft and the passengers within it.
Exactly.
So our priority is not serving you. So
Right.
like, I get that you are there and you would love a drink and you would love to get served, but if it's not safe for us to be in the aisle, we're
Yeah.
not going to get up. And
Yeah,
that
fair.
seatbelt sign, it's for you and your safety and our safety. So if the pilots are like, hey, it's not going to be safe to be in the aisle at this time, we're going to stay seated too, So our priority is the safety of passengers in the aircraft.
That seems like that's what it should be.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it'd be nice to have snacks and all that jet, but like the more important part is the safety of everyone and the safety of the plane. Do you have a jet lag cure?
Oh my gosh. I wish
Do you have
I wish
something?
I had a jet lag cure.
Ah,
Honestly, like it's really hard. I feel like I'm constantly jet lagged.
yeah, I would
I'm in a different,
imagine.
yeah, I'm in different time zones multiple times a day, right? Um, and I hate to say this, but it's like just drink a lot of water,
Okay,
a lot of water. That helps a lot with kind of like getting your body to adjust. Especially because you're going to be dehydrated traveling, and that's one of the things like we walk through with waters all the time, and I'm surprised like how little people take it. Um, Drink water, drink it, and that
okay,
I think really helps at least with like the headaches and stuff that comes
sure.
along with jet lag. And yeah, being tired is like the only cure really is to sleep
Just
right at
part
that
of the
point.
job. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Dang. I was hoping you had like a trick. You're like, take this, do this. Yeah, take this kind of thing, drink this, and then you're good to go. Like, oh, perfect. Look
I
at that.
wish there was a secret.
Saved
If
the world.
there is, someone
I'll
please
figure
let
it
me
out.
know. But
All right. The only thing I ever try and do is when I'm traveling like either more than 3 hours or even to the East Coast, it's like I try and go to sleep at my normal time. So if I land at
yeah,
like 6 and it's 9 o'clock, or whatever, if I land at like midnight but it's only 9, I'm like, nah, you gotta try and go to sleep, because then I
mm-hmm.
can try and get onto some kind of schedule. But yeah, I mean, that seems like that would nearly be impossible for you guys. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah. I mean, for me, it's hard because it's like some days I'm working a red eye flight
mm-hmm.
where it's like an all nighter, and then
Yeah,
I like go get a few hours of sleep, and then I got to work during that day. So it's
that
a
makes it
challenge
tough.
to try it. I don't have a regular sleep schedule, but it makes up for it when I like get to travel and have those fun.
Sure.
I get to go to Hawaii. I get to go all over. I've been to all 50 states. I've been to 30
Wow.
countries. So I cannot complain about like the opportunities that I've been given for sure.
True. Um, the last question I had before we get to the last little bit of the podcast is, as a passenger, I mean, you kind of touched on this, but maybe we can like try and sum it up in one little, nice little package with a bow on it. But as a passenger, what can I do to make your job easier?
Mm-hmm. Um, Honestly, like when you from stepping on the plane, first of all, please still say hello. Just say hello to us. Like it's surprising how many people don't actually greet us.
Yeah. Okay.
Try to find your seat, sit down. Like people will stand in the aisle and they're pulling out their headphones and their book and this and that, and it kind of just slows down that boarding process. So Try to stow your bag, your large one up in the overhead, small one underneath. That's why there's two places. If
Yeah.
there's room after, you can put that small bag up. That's fine. But try to take your seat as quickly as possible. That helps us out a lot. Trying to follow the seatbelt sign. A lot
Okay.
of people would stand up when it's on. It is on for a reason. Being kind, being patient. If you like, don't be shy to ring the flight attendant call light. But
I'm always
also,
nervous about that.
I
I'm
know,
always
I
nervous
think
about that. I
everyone
don't know
is.
why. I'm like, I feel like I'm disturbing them. I feel like I could, it's fine. I'll be fine. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. Like, I mean, I think that maybe some of us get frustrated if like we just went through a service or
Sure.
like, and then you're ringing it because you want a second drink for like, we were just with you. But you know what? That is our job as well. We don't mind if you come to the galleys at all and ask for something, or like if you
Okay.
need a snack or anything, please like come talk to us. Even if you just want to chat, like sometimes we've been hanging out with each other for days on end. We love talking to people. Like that's a big part of the job is talking to new people.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
Also read the room. Like, if
Yes,
they're doing something, maybe
absolutely.
that's not the right time. Yeah.
Yes, if I'm eating, try not to ask
Yeah.
me for something.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yeah. Fair.
um, try not to, if we're doing something in the galley, my favorite, like, not my favorite, I'm being sarcastic. Like, they try to do, we call it galley yoga, where they're
Oh,
like, oh, I just need to stretch. And it's been like 30 minutes into the flight, and they're coming and they're like touching their toes. And I'm sitting there with my salad, and I'm
mm,
like,
really?
I really don't want this in my
Yeah.
face.
I don't need yoga right now, but okay.
Yeah. Like that is kind of our
Hmm.
private space of, that's where we get a little bit of like privacy from you guys. And so like maybe
Yeah.
don't try to like take it over. Um, do not walk around the airplane barefoot, please.
Oh, that's so, no.
It happens all the time. And like it's so funny because they're like, oh, there's some water on the floor. And I'm just like, not water.
No.
Not water.
No, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mm-mm.
don't walk around barefoot.
No.
Like if you're at your seat and it's a long flight, okay. I get it. Maybe you want to take your shoes off. Hopefully your
I
feet don't
don't.
stink.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
get it.
know. Especially during
Keep your
takeoff
shoes
and
on.
landing,
Yeah.
keep your shoes on. Because
It's
if
not
we're
that
gonna
hard.
have an emergency, you want your shoes on.
Sure.
Absolutely want your shoes on. And yeah, but yeah, the flight attendant call light thing, I don't mind necessarily getting the flight attendant call light. And if you're not feeling good, please tell us. Please tell us. Like, because we are actually, I mean, that's another thing that I guess I can put in the job description. Like up in flight, we are the paramedics, we're the
Yeah.
firefighters, we're police. Like
Yeah.
we can be your therapist, I guess, a little bit
Eh,
sometimes. People love talking to us about
sure.
a
You're like the
lot of
bartender.
details. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's those are maybe a couple of things to make your job easier. Sometimes people are like, hey, what can I bring the flight attendant? Like as a
Hmm.
thank you. I
Yeah.
would say like Starbucks gift cards are great. Like there's a Starbucks in every
Starbucks everywhere.
airport.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it's really a simple gesture
Hmm.
that we like appreciate. Even a card, like I love from little kids. I love getting like handwritten just thank you notes. Um, on topic of kids, the kids can go into the flight deck and
Okay.
take pictures on the like so that's something that's really fun. They can take pictures with us, and
Sure.
I kids seem to love that. And then
Nice.
yeah, just say thank you when you leave. Try to remove your headphones when we're talking to you. That's another kind of simple thing I feel people forget. um yeah, just
All right.
really, it's like you would think it's common knowledge, common decency and respect.
It seems like that goes out the window when people get on planes, though. Like they
Yeah,
forget how to just be a human. It's like, dude,
yeah,
just be normal. It's okay. Like
yeah,
I get
yeah.
your. It's not a. You're not on a pirate ship.
I get like traveling stressful,
Yeah.
and maybe you're in your own world, but
Uh-huh.
don't forget, like we're there, we want to be helpful. Something that is probably the biggest pet peeve is touching the flight attendant, poking us, tugging on our dresses, trash, like just handing us trash. I'm like, I'm not a trash compartment. Like when I have a bag, I'll take your trash, but
Of
don't just
course. Yeah.
hand it to me randomly. And yeah, the poking the flight attendant thing,
That's insane.
it happens so much. And then I
That's
turn and I'm
insane.
like, please don't touch me. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'm trying to get your attention. I'm like, you could say, excuse me.
Yeah,
that would work
that
too.
works too. I have ears.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly. But it's like they have their headphones in, and so like they forget they can maybe talk and hear, and so they just poke you.
Mhm.
And I'm like, please,
Mm-mm.
please don't touch
Don't do
me.
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Personal
that's my
space.
advice.
Fair.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. Um, the last bit of the podcast that I always like to do is I like to give my guests a little time to either, promote something side business, a charity, a cause, or they just want to, let the viewer know something that, kind of like we just did a little bit. But, if there's anything that you want to bring attention to or mention, here's your time.
Um, so airlines are hiring. It's like a great opportunity right now to get hired. We're like every airline, I swear, is short staffed. But if it's something that you've been thinking about, like it is by far the most fun and amazing career that I am so grateful to have. Like I get to travel the world. I get to bring my family with me
Yeah.
for free. Like all that is
That's
true.
cool. Nice.
And it is just, even if you want to do it, like I said, a year or two, like it is just the greatest job ever. And I love answering questions. I love talking about my job. I love being able to help people in the hiring process. So welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer all the questions, social media. And yeah, so that's all I can really say is like, please, like, reach out, ask questions, get involved, and be nice to your flight attendants.
There you go. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. Really appreciate you being on with me today. Thank you for, giving us the information that I think a lot of people maybe need or maybe just need a refresher on. They forget sometimes, but that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Jobology podcast. Thank you, Lindsay, for giving us an insight into your job. Before I let you guys go, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at Jobology Podcast on all major social media, and make sure you're commenting what jobs you'd like to see next. Like we say to end every episode, make good choices.